Welcome back, friends, and I'm excited to join you again. It's been a couple of weeks, and this is the rhythm it's going to be in the off season. Stay tuned. We'll make sure you guys know exactly when we're going to be heading live here on In the Trenches. But to let you know what's going on M Go Blue podcast, Defend the Block came out yesterday. A great conversation with assistant Mike Boynton Jr. Also last week, Damari Burnett. So if you missed that one, it's all about his decision to return for his sixth season of college basketball, Conquering Heroes. This is one I'm excited to talk about. It's coming out on Thursday, back-to-back Big Ten tournament titles for the softball team, and my guest, the most outstanding player in both seasons, Lauren Durkowski, pitched a great game on really all weekend, but she's going to join me on Thursday. So excited to sit down and talk to her. But at this time, I want to bring in my partner, Mr. Brian Boesch.
Softball at a high level is so much fun to follow, to watch, to experience live. For Michigan to knock off the top two seeds and the Cinderella, the host seed Purdue, which was the first 12 to ever get to the semis. Awesome. And I'll tell you this. I know some baseball, softball tournaments are double elimination. I love the single elimination, especially in baseball, because it's really tough. You just run out of arms if you're playing 5-6 games over the course of a stretch. I like it in the 4-team pods for regionals. You don't want it to just be 3 total games. But man, that having 11 high-level softball games this past weekend was awesome.
It was. And I mean, hey, it's you push all chips to the center of the table when it is single elimination. And Lauren Durkowski, the entire team, it was a pitching duel. And they obviously was with the 6th inning. They ended up scoring a couple of runs. So it was a lot of fun, and you could see the excitement all weekend long when they were putting their name on the tournament bracket, waiting for Bonnie to get there on one of those so she could join in it as well. And then obviously the championship game, taking down UCLA. It's always great to welcome them, continue to welcome them to the Big Ten.
And Hutch is such a legend, and having her still be around as much as she is such a positive for the program. But you have to imagine for Bonnie, there's a little bit of extra pressure there. And for her to be able to do what she's done and take that baton after being with Hutch for so long, I'm incredibly happy for her, the success that she's had, because that's a different thing than following almost any other coach in any other spot. To follow Carol Hutchins at Michigan, it's tough.
Oh, and to make the tournament, the big tournament, the NCAA tournament, the World Series, I think I saw the stat. It's 29 times in the last 30 years, and so this was something that they needed to win to get in. They did. They took care of business, and now it's on to Sunday. Is that when the announcements for the brackets will come out?
It's already out. So Michigan's in the Austin region. They've got UCF coming up on Friday. So it's a quick turnaround.
Yeah. So it'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see what happens.
No doubt. All right. I can't wait to talk about a little bit of Michigan football here on our 7 from 77. And number one, John, of course, spring ball in the rearview mirror, graduation in the books on campus, the annual rainy weekend followed by the most immaculate, beautiful weekend ever, the weekend after graduation. It is a Michigan tradition. So we're in mid-May, quiet time in college football. Detail the next few weeks, couple of months here for the program from now until fall camp.
Well, a lot of the guys in the program are out. They're either home, they're out training somewhere else. They're really all around the country. It's a quiet time here in Ann Arbor in regards to football. A lot of training going on right now, but I was going to say I was working out with TJ Guy. I was working out at the same time TJ Guy was, and was talking to him about what the next couple of weeks look like. And he said, he was going somewhere else just to get out of town for a little bit, refresh, still continue to train. Maybe get a little sun at the same time. Classes begin. I think it's this week classes begin, but most of them at this time of the year are all online. So guys are going to be taking care of business there, but also, just mentally getting a break, getting a refresh, but still putting in the work in the gym.
My question would be, would we be more worried about you being able to stick with TJ Guy if you guys were working out in the same plant, or would be worried, boy, I don't know if this TJ Guy breakout's happening. He's doing the Jansen workout.
I'm not sure what you're inferring there. I don't know if you have noticed lately, but you're still welcome to the gun show at any point. But no, trust me, I was working out next to him, and the level of intensity on my side, not quite as what it used to be. So no, it would be a concern if he was doing the John Jansen program.
He would not be on the freaks
old
list
man
next
program.
year.
Yeah, I'm just trying to walk tomorrow, and get out of my chair, do all the basics of life versus actually competing at a high level.
Yeah. Hey, I know back in the day you did it, but it's a real shame the gun show was just the fist showing up, so we didn't actually see the guns.
I know.
It's a real shame. But
I've got the tight camera angle right now, and I'm not sure I'd have to go wide for that angle.
Yeah, no, we need to move on for a number of reasons, but it's a great flip to number 2 on our 7 from 77. Of course, when Michigan lost Ben Herbert, he followed Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. He was very popular inside the program, outside the program. A lot of people knew his name. He was a favorite here on the podcast. Awesome interview. So Justin Tress, this is his first kind of full year, full go around. Now that you've seen him operate over the last 12 plus months, how would you rate Michigan in terms of being in good hands with him? How has that process gone? And this time of year, what kind of an impact does a Justin Tress have really from the end of last year until you get to fall camp?
Well, I mean, the job description for the strength coach has largely remained the same, but it is expanded. And as I just mentioned, all of these guys are around the country in regards to training at different places. A lot of them are at home, spending time with family. So it's a matter of communication. How often do you get on, FaceTime or whatever video it is that you can actually see the players, put eyes on the players? And so a large part of his day is just spent contacting guys. If they have questions, what should I be doing? How should I be doing it? All of those different things. And just keeping track, getting them to report back in as to what they are actually doing, and motivating from afar. That's part of what he's doing. And here's the other thing. And this is something that I knew happened when I was here with Mike Gittleson was the strength and conditioning coach. I know Ben was this way, and I've witnessed this over the last year, but especially this offseason with Tress in regards to being innovative and bringing in new technologies, being a cutting edge, a leader in the strength and conditioning realm in regards to developing and tweaking machines to make them better for training for football. Sometimes it's not, and we've all heard this, right? It's not about training harder, it's training smarter. And I saw it with Mike Gittleson in some of the innovations that he had in the early stages of the development of strength and conditioning programs around the country. Mike was one of the first. And it's always followed the strength and conditioning coaches of Michigan. How can you continue to be innovative and tweak different implements? There's a sled that they have out on the field, and they've got a number of them, and they train all different positions on them, but they were tweaking it a little bit to make it a little bit more realistic for offensive and defensive linemen in regards to getting their hands in tight on pads and putting new handles. And it could be as simple as, instead of being out, just past the shoulders where it makes sense for the machine, how do you move those handles inside so it makes more sense for offensive and defensive linemen? And I was talking to him about some of the tweaks that they were making, and giving him my input, and then seeing that input into some of these different machines. So, it's a busy time for the strength and conditioning coaches. Tress overlooking his staff, guys that are still in town training. Those are a priority, obviously, but it's also staying in communication and sending out workouts, and adjusting those workouts to the different weight rooms that all these guys are in. So it's become, again, the same, but it's somewhat a little bit more complicated, just because these guys, I mean, a lot of them have money now, and they can spend a couple of weeks down south at home doing different things. You could take classes online. So guys are spread out at this time of the year, but still putting in a lot of work.
All right, number 3 on our 7 from 77. Switching topics a little bit. Since we last talked, Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, he's been at the pulse of really all things college football playoff structure and proposed changes, discussions, all of it. He reported that, quote, momentum is building, end quote, to move the playoff to 14 or 16 teams. And there is, again, quote, growing Big Ten SEC support, end quote, for a 16-team playoff with automatic bids, 4 for both those leagues, 2 for both the ACC and the Big 12, 1 for the remaining group of 6, with 3 at-larges, and then potentially a 3 versus 6 and a 4 versus 5 play-in game within the Big 10 and the SEC for those automatic bids. Let's start just in the vacuum of the structure itself. These proposals, what are your thoughts?
I think 16 is too many. I know that they do it at all different levels of college football, but when you're talking about, especially with teams being able to pay players, there's no salary cap. There's going to, whatever this house settlement happens, right? There's going to be a certain number that the university will pay, but it doesn't limit collectives. And you're always going to have, I think, 4, 5, 6 teams that are always competing for the top playoff spots and will eventually be the national champions, just simply because they're going to have a bigger donor base. They're going to have more money to spend on better players. I think the wild card, which we may start seeing, is, and this kind of gets off tangent just a little bit, but I'll see if I can land the plane here at some point. When you have a player like Shedeur Sanders, who is actually going to make less money in the NFL being a, 5th round pick versus what he could have made at being at Colorado. Same thing with, I forget the kid's name at Texas, who ended up being, taking
Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers, who, if he had entered the transfer portal, if he wasn't going to be the starter at Texas, if that's going to be Arch Manning's job, Carson Beck went to Georgia, is going to make $4 million this year. He could have made probably more as a quarterback that took a team to the playoffs, won a playoff game. And you're looking at these guys as decisions of, do I want to go ahead and make that jump to the NFL, which is every kid's dream. But if I'm going to be, a 2nd round pick, a 3rd round pick, 4th round pick, or even further down the list, do I want to stick around another year in college football? And I'm using a couple of quarterbacks as an example, but honestly, anybody that was taken late 2nd or later in the draft, you may have a chance to make more money at the college level than the risk of being cut or not making that much money your first couple of years in the NFL. So if that happens and more players stay another year, they're still going to be moving around college football. We have no idea where these players are going to land, but when they land and they're making this amount of money, we might start seeing a leveling of the playing field, because even though Ohio State, Michigan, we've seen them spend money, Alabama, Georgia, University of Miami, these teams are going to be able to spend money. It's not unlimited funds. And if there's more good players in college football, especially older players, maybe there's a silver lining in evening out the competition that you're facing. And so in bringing it back to this conversation, maybe there are more teams that will compete for, a one-off from year to year, simply because more of those good players are going to stay longer in college football.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thought exercise. As we get into number 4 on our 7 from 77, the thing that I worry about, especially with a 16-teamer, is the impact to the regular season. How much does this risk the big games between top 5, top 10 teams if you go to 16? Because then you're playing, everybody needs to play and win 4 games to win a national championship. I like the structure now because there is value to getting a bye. You can argue that maybe they need to adjust how buys are determined. Totally. I agree. But I think that's a bug in the system, not a reason to ditch the system. If you go to a 16-team playoff, then there's a real potential that you are making big-time matchups in November, the biggest being the game, where it's just delaying the playoff battle in terms of maybe Michigan, Ohio State could play in a 3-6 game. They could play in the Big Ten championship game that next week if they're both 8-0 going into the game. That's what I worry about. You want to make a little more money? Do 14 and do the top 2 conference champions get an automatic bye. Because if you're the Big Ten and SEC, you're probably going to be that every single year. Give meaning to that championship game beyond, if you're going to put so much in the playoff, give a playoff aspect to that championship game in the Big Ten and the SEC. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because I'm not sure why, if they're going to have the 3-6, 4-5 playoff to get in for those 2 auto bids, why would 1 and 2 really care who wins in that championship game? Now, I say that, and it pains me to say that because it's championship. But why even play that game if ultimately both teams are going to be playing in the college football playoffs? They're going to get that auto bid, and now it just depends on who wins between 3-6, 4-5. It won't make any sense to play that game.
Look at last year in the Big Ten. It was very clear in the regular season, Oregon was the best team in the Big Ten, right? They were the most accomplished Big Ten team. They didn't need to beat Penn State to accomplish that. And here's the other aspect. If you get to this point, what gets a higher rating? A 3 versus 6 game? Say the brands are all the same, right? Say it's not Michigan, Ohio State in one, and
Yep.
You know, with all due respect, Illinois and Indiana in another, right? If all else is equal, doesn't the 3 versus 6 play-in game for the playoff draw better than a 1 versus 2 Big Ten or SEC championship game?
Yeah, especially if both teams are going into that game like, well, okay, we want to win a championship, but we don't want to get anybody hurt. Like, I just don't understand the concept behind that, and the motivation behind it. It's just, it doesn't appear to be there. Now, if it's a life or death situation, or win and get in, or lose and you're going home, now, yeah, there's something to play for. And I mean, this I call it the Indiana clause, right? It's the 3-6-4-5, where Indiana had a light schedule. They ended up getting into the, could have been in the college football playoffs or in the college football playoffs. And everybody's arguing, well, should they be in, or should Tennessee be in, or should they be in, or Ole Miss be in? Like, those are the conversations that we were having last year. Now, all of a sudden, hey, you are actually going to be forced to play another good team. Win and you're in. Now, the question will be, if a 3 loses to a 6, do they still get in because of one of the auto bids? Like, then what's the point of playing that game? I just, there's so many things to iron out in terms of motivation for playing a championship game. And what are they going to do with those 3, non-auto bids, the at-large bids? Obviously, Notre Dame will always be a part of that conversation because they refuse to get into a conference. But then there's 2 more. Does it go to an SEC team and a Big Ten team? So now you're getting 5 in. Is that really necessary at that point? There's still a lot to be determined. And I know that there are some in the Big 10, the Big 12 and the ACC that don't like obviously Big 10 and SEC getting the 4 auto bids, and they only get 2. Well, sorry, the Big 10 and SEC are big dogs, and we're allowing you to participate at that point. That's what it feels like. And you could take it as a slight, you could take it however you want, but money is going to sell. That's why if you do have 4 games to win a national championship, 4 is greater than 3, 3 is greater than 2, and each one means more money for these programs and for the NCAA. Actually, it's not the NCAA, it's the College Football Playoff Committee.
So if I'm the ACC or the Big 12, I probably take this and run, because those teams, the Big 12, who would have been the number 2 team? And would have been Iowa State at what, 4 losses last year? Because they lost to Arizona State. Yeah. So is there much of an impact there? I think if I'm the ACC or the Big 12, that's a positive for me that I'm guaranteed 2 spots.
Okay, then why do those teams play their best players in that championship game if both of them are getting in?
Well, that's where I think if you're the Big 12 or the ACC, you just let the number 1 team not play, and then you play a play-in 2 versus 3. That's what I think you should do.
Yeah, I agree with that, because now it makes sense. And Again, I go back to, if you have 4 automatic qualifiers in the SEC and the Big Ten, then why would 1 and 2 play if they're already in?
Mm-hmm. Oh, agreed.
So I mean, again, it's very, it makes little sense to me in regards to that. So I'm worried that you would lose the championship game. I love the 3, 6, 4, 5 matchups. I think that's very intriguing. I love win and you're in, but then I don't want one of those teams to get one of the at-large bids. If there's not a group of 5, like group of 5 gets 1. If there's not another team that is 11-1, or if they're 10-2, now all of a sudden you're looking at it as, I think the other aspect is, will the SEC eventually go to a 9-game, 9-conference regular season schedule? Because then you're starting to compare the at-large bids with Big Ten teams that are playing 9 and only playing 3 out of conference. If they're playing 4 out of conference, why would they ever schedule a tough opponent? They'd get 4 patsies, and now all of a sudden they got 4 wins. And if you're comparing wins and losses, it just it makes it's so discombobulated right now that there needs to be a lot to be decided.
So I think on paper, the concept of a 3 versus 6, a 4 versus 5, that has some intrigue without the context. But after the course of a season, and with the playoffs on the brink, would you rather just have a 12-team playoff, or would you rather have, this would have been last year, I think I have this right, it would have been Indiana versus Iowa and Ohio State versus Illinois. Is that really worth, and the SEC, I have no earthly idea, because the SEC had Texas at 7-1. They had Georgia, who played in the SEC title game, at 6-2. Tennessee would have been the 3, and then there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh my gosh. No, 6. There were 6 5-3 teams. So we would have had to have found tiebreakers for 3 of those 6 teams to fill out that bracket. So just say, go by overall record. Are you that fired up for Tennessee versus Ole Miss and Missouri versus Alabama?
No, I'd
rather have a better playoff.
Right. And I mean, okay, if we want a better playoff, I think 12 teams is too many. And now you go back down to 8, or you go to 6, which I thought either of those would have been a better option than 8. But again, 12 is much greater than 4, and it's a lot more money. 16 is greater than 14, which I know is the other one that they're throwing around, and more games, more money. That's what ultimately, and it just goes to the bastardization of college sports. It's all about the dollar. And when you're chasing the dollar on a repeated basis, you're going to lose a lot of the fabric that has made that sport, college football, so great.
Totally agree. We're on the same wavelength here. You can sell me on 14. I still don't like it, but at least that preserves, if you're a top 2 seed, you earn a playoff win. You earn that.
Yeah. It's just there's so much that they need to iron out, and you just hope that those that are in that room are having the same conversations we're having, and they're legitimate, not just based on, well, if we play this championship game, we'll get more money. If you're playing a championship game that neither team wants to be in, knowing that they're going to be playing the next week or they're already in, how good is that? I mean, it's going to be a third preseason game in the NFL.
Yep, no doubt. All right, number 5 on our 7 from 77. Approaching 25, and what might be the last 12-team playoff, the second of 2 in college football history. I want to go through each power conference. Give me the most intriguing team that you are, again, we'll get predictions and thoughts on who are contenders as we get closer. There's a lot to iron out, but just starting in the Big Ten, taking out Michigan, of course, who is the team that you're maybe most intrigued by, and why?
Well, I'm going to go with And there's a couple of these where I'm going to have to throw in a couple of teams because there's a bunch of different storylines. But for the Big Ten, it's really just going to be Ohio State. How do they replace Will Howard, who's not a great quarterback, but he was a quarterback that, quarterbacked them to a national title. Couldn't beat Michigan. But when you look at like Julian Salen, transfer from, I believe, Alabama, it was a recruiting shift, whatever, grabbed a different hat. I don't care. How does he play as a young player who has really had very little experience playing in games? And there's a lot of talent that they're replacing there. And I know that they've dipped their toe into the transfer portal, but they're kind of in that same position where Michigan was last year. Penn State was very public about it. They had a quarterback that entered the transfer portal while they were still playing. You can't necessarily take players out of the transfer portal while you're still playing. And, how do they manage that from last year to this year with the roster and with a quarterback that is inexperienced? I know he's very talented, but there is something to be said for some experience. So that is probably my biggest. And then I'll give you another wild card in the Big Ten, and that's Wisconsin. Wisconsin has 3 different transfer quarterbacks vying for the air raid system that they put in place. And I'm looking at Luke Fickell has been there for a few years now. He's tried to install this system. There's going to be very little patience in Madison if they're not contending for either one of the playoff spots, maybe not a Big Ten championship this year, but Billy Edmonds Jr. looks like he's the front runner for their quarterback spot. And he's been at Maryland. He's been at Wake Forest before that. And he's the oldest, most experienced quarterback. But I just don't know at Wisconsin how patient they're going to be with Luke Fickell. Everybody thought, hey, going from Cincinnati to there, hey, he's going to rejuvenate it. Nobody thought that the air raid offense was going to be coming to Madison. And if they make a change, how long does it get to get back on track? We know what it took for Michigan.
Yeah, he's 13-13 at Wisconsin, and they went 3-6 in the league last year. My 2 higher end is Penn State. I mean, you want to talk about wide range of outcomes. Penn State could have another playoff run and maybe a top 5 overall pick in Drew Aller if everything comes together, or Aller could be a disappointment. Penn State could be a disappointment. James Franklin could yell at fans at a game like he did in the spring game, and they're back to being that 9-3 purgatory team. So I'm fascinated by them, and I think Illinois is going to get and has already gotten a lot of potential playoff conversation because of their schedule. Their road games are Duke in the non-conference, Indiana, Purdue, Washington, and Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And they avoid Michigan. They avoid Oregon. Their big game is home against Ohio State on October 11th. That's a potential 10, maybe 11 win season if everything comes together. So I'm curious. There'll be a popular playoff pick in that.
I'm sure they will be.
Spot. Yeah. SEC.
SEC. This is where things get a little bit weird in terms of trying to pick one team, because I'd start with Alabama. And Alabama, obviously no Jalen Milroe at quarterback. It's Kalen DeBoer's second year in Tuscaloosa. And we know if there's a fan base that has zero patience, it's down there in Tuscaloosa. There were a lot of fans voicing their displeasure for not being a playoff team, for not competing for an SEC championship. And I'm curious as to recruiting, the transfer portal, and just he's won everywhere he's been. I know he can win at Alabama as well, but the landscape of college football has changed so much, and the parameters, the rules, everything is different. How does that affect him and that fan base moving forward? Is he only there for 2 years, and then they try and pull the plug, pull the ripcord, and go a different direction? LSU, and we all know that it's Brian Kelly's been there for some time now. It's very public, believing of Notre Dame, wants to win national championships, wants to win SEC championships. Garrett Nussmeier is going to be their quarterback. And he's a 5th-year guy. So he's got all the experience in the world. A lot of people are talking about him as possibly, along with Arch Manning, we'll get to them in a second, as one of the top quarterbacks in college football. Brian Kelly's going to need him to be the top quarterback in college football to get this LSU program back to competing for whether it's SEC titles or even a spot in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, that they are the SEC's Penn State quarterback that has a wide range of outcomes for where he is at this time next year. And remember, LSU, they're winless, I think, in openers under Brian Kelly, right? And they face Clemson in week 1,
which is
not
awesome.
A gimme. So
yeah, no, and the other one I mentioned already, Texas.
Yeah,
with Sarkisian, Arch Manning. There's so many people that are just picking him as the number 1 overall draft pick next year, and they may be right. I mean, I think he's tremendous, but it's still going to be, it's his job, it's his team, and what's he going to do as a quarterback? What's he going to do as a leader? How is he going to guide this team? They obviously were very good last year, and he stepped in at different times to play, like we saw JJ do early on in his career when Arch is their starting quarterback. He's their go-to guy. How does he play, and how does he lead that team?
How about Big 12 and ACC? They're not guaranteed 2 spots each. Big 12 snuck in 2 last year. Big 12 only had 1. ACC snuck in 2 last year. I think I might know where one of your ACC ones is.
Well, I'll give you Big 12 first, and foremost, I'm still trying to figure out who is in the Big 12 and the ACC in terms of football. But I think I got to go to Colorado and Coach Prime. What's he going to do with no Travis Hunter, no Shadur, no Shiloh on the defensive side of things? Not that that's a loss, but now he's not going to be coaching any of the guys that he brought from Jackson State. And what does that look like? They've got a transfer quarterback in, I think his name is Caden Salter. He originally was at Tennessee and then transferred to Liberty. Now he's at Colorado. Again, it's trying to track where these players are, where they've been. It's bizarre. But what will Coach Prime do without his son at quarterback, with somebody that he is so familiar with and his offensive staff is so familiar with in calling plays and having a playmaker on both sides of the ball like Travis Hunter? That's a huge loss. What does Colorado look like this year without those 2 playmakers?
And ACC, are you going down to Chapel Hill?
ACC, I have 2 teams. Okay. One of them, yes, will definitely be North Carolina. And I mean,
the addition of Coach Hudson.
It's so comical what's going on there. And honestly, I'm just, it kind of makes me sad because one of, if not arguably the greatest coach in NFL history in Bill Belichick. And it's been such a circus. I don't want to see this year this circus to continue for his reputation and for his standing in football, for those that, because it was such a long run in New England. Like, there are a lot of football fans now that don't remember Belichick and Brady's first Super Bowl. They don't remember the great run at the beginning. All they know is Bill Belichick. Okay, yeah, they know they don't necessarily know the history of his time in Cleveland as a coach or as an assistant coach, or the path that he took to get where he was, the great leader that he was of that organization as coach and general manager. And it's just about the breakup of Belichick and Brady going on to win another Super Bowl, and Belichick not being able to win or make the playoffs. It kind of makes me sad looking at the destruction of a little bit of his legacy. But I'm here for every minute of it. And
really stretching the belief that all publicity is good publicity.
Right. Yes. There's no question, especially when you finish 3rd in a beauty pageant. That's stretching the publicity of it. And then I'll for legitimate football reasons, the U, Miami, Carson Beck, obviously, transferred from Georgia. What type of impact will he have down there? Can he have a Cam Ward impact? Can he do better than Cam Ward? Some of it was obviously game management by their coach. Some of it was just, hey, wrong turnovers, wrong time. Couldn't come up with some defensive stops. They've hit the portal. They're paying their players. They've got a roster that looks like it can do some damage. But again, it's which coach in college football can get all these new guys that you're going to have on a yearly basis with the transfer portal to grow together as a team as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. There's no doubt. Number 6 on our 7 from 77. Just a few relevant NFL topics here for Michigan fans, starting with J.J. McCarthy. We haven't talked about him much. I feel like he is a real pivot point, maybe in the entire NFL season, because of what the Vikings did last year, not bringing back Sam Darnold. Commitment to J.J. definitely being the starter hasn't necessarily been there, but run out of time. Aaron Rodgers is the only kind of quarterback hanging out there. How do you think he's handled all of this? And what is a realistic year 1 expectation for JJ? Well, year 2, but real first year after the injury last year.
I think Kevin O'Connell is a terrific coach. And, what he did with Sam Darnold last year, JJ's got more innate talent and physical skills. But making that transition from college football to the NFL, especially when you're coming from a program that he wasn't the featured passer, it was still the run game. They're going to run the ball in Minnesota. Here's what I like about what they've done. They've secured the offensive line. He's going to be able to hand the ball off, much like the Michigan offense, and watch that offensive line go to work. He's going to be able to sit back in the pocket and be well protected. He's going to have a lot of weapons to throw the ball to. Those are all great. But there is another element, and that is called a defense. And it's going to be a much different defense than he saw. He had the ability to sit there, watch Sam Darnold, watch him be coached up, watch him make great plays, watch him make mistakes. And I know JJ will learn from those, but this is more of a on-the-job training situation. And so I think realistically, it's probably a 10 or 11 win team, which some may think is a little bit lofty. I just think with that wide receiving core and Brian Flores is your defensive coordinator, they're a talented team, and it's really just going to be how does JJ make that transition and how much can he be an impactful playmaker by the end of the season.
I think the NFC North is the best division in football, and trying to come up with who's going to finish last in that division is really, really difficult. Yeah, I agree. But could you see the Bears make the playoffs too? I could.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say they can't. I just think it's a bit of a stretch in that division when they're going to have to play Green Bay twice. They're going to have to play Minnesota twice. They're going to have to play. Now they're going to have the last place schedule, but they're going to have to play Detroit twice. I think it's a big jump in year 1 of Ben Johnson.
Yeah, agreed. Not saying. Totally with you, but you look at other last place teams projected. There are much worse ones in the NFL.
Sure.
Speaking of, one of them is Cleveland. Did you see Mason Graham with too many wings pre-rookie minicamp practice?
Such a rookie mistake. I wish I was in that locker room. Oh my goodness. I mean, he just gave them material. Not just for this year, but that's going to be. I mean, I've got to imagine his nickname is Chicken Wing. It would fit because of what happened, and unfortunate for him. Fortunate for the rest of the other 52 guys that are going to be on that roster. Hilarious, absolutely hilarious. Feel bad for him in the moment, but
yeah, I heard some Browns beat writer talk about the fact that he went to like the media center in their training camp space, and he just saw photographers all editing pictures of him. For those who don't know, Mason had too many wings before a practice this past weekend, and then, well, the wings, they came back up, and that was
just hope it was a good flavor. I hope he enjoyed them on the way down, because on the way back up, it never tastes the same, but you do have the opportunity to enjoy them twice.
Yeah, no, that's heck of a start. That's I don't know if it's a great omen, but we'll see. The schedule release is like this whole week now. The thing I want to say is college football could do this. We don't need announcements for games in 2033. Give me something like this. Now, I'm not saying stretch it out 3 days, 4 days, on Good Morning America or whatever, but make the schedule release interesting. College football, the NFL does it.
Yeah, the NFL does it as good as anybody, and they make. I mean, the NFL prints money, and they make every event, the combine, watching guys run around in their underwear, made for TV experience. The draft, instead of 2 days, now it spans 3 days, and it's made for TV drama. And now, whether it's rookie mini camp, it's the schedule release, like, there is not a month where you're not talking about something big in the NFL in the entire offseason.
They're the best at it in the world, no doubt. All right, number 7 on our 7 from 77. On the audio side here of In the Trenches, you'll catch up with new wide receiver Donaven McCully here in moments. How does Donovan fit into this wide receiver room, and how would you size up the most likely receivers? We're talking 95th percentile, high upside, top 10 receivers in the Big Ten type of a range. Who, in your eyes, has that potential within the Michigan wide receiver room?
Top 10 in the conference?
I know I'm shooting high. I'm saying, top 20 in the conference.
All right. I think good producers, and some of it for Michigan is just going to be depending on the development of the quarterback.
Sure.
And I know they're anticipating Mikey Keene will be healthy, and he's going to be back competing for that starting job. We all know Bryce Underwood is going to be probably the starting quarterback. Jaden Davis is right there as well, but it's whoever comes out of there with being able to deliver the ball to guys. And I think Fred Moore is probably has the highest upside of this group. Donovan McCully, simply because he's got a little bit more experience. He's got more height. I think he's just maybe a little bit limited in terms of being able to have those breakout plays, explosive plays. I don't know. He has the speed. I think he's going to be a huge red zone threat. I think once you get on the opposite side of the 50, he's going to be a huge threat, converting first downs. But I think if you're looking at a guy that's going to put up some numbers, I would look at Fred Moore as one of those guys.
So let's make our transitions. On the audio side, John had a great conversation with new wideout Donovan McCully. Here on the video side, just a few things. We've got about 15 minutes or so to wrap up here on our live stream this week. Talk about level jumpers, right? I think you're probably more optimistic that there are guys that are a little off the beaten path in other position groups who can become top 10 or better in the Big Ten at their position. Give me your top 3 level jumpers for Michigan in 2025. Guys, we all know some of the stars on this team, but who can go from, we project him to have a role and maybe a starting spot to, we're talking about this person maybe high in the draft next year or as one of the top players for Michigan in 26.
I'm going to give you one who's a senior who has been coming on, played well last year, but through spring ball, he's really going to allow this defense to be more creative, for Wink to be able to use Jayshon Barham, Ernest Hausman in a lot of different ways. That's Jimmy Rolder. And I know I've talked about him a little bit, but the way that he's worked, the way that he played during spring ball, I can't wait for him to take the field in the fall. I think this is going to be one of the best linebacking cores in all of football. And part of that is the creative ways that they can use Jayshon Barham, but they can only use him as an edge guy or as a blitz guy or in a lot of different ways if they got a guy like Jimmy Rolder sitting in the middle that is as consistent and a downhill linebacker, could cover backs out of the backfield, could cover, and drop into zone coverage. I think he's going to have a hell of a year. The other guy, and I talk about him quite a bit, but part of it was not a glowing review at times last year. That's Zeke Berry. The way that I saw him work from really the second half of last season, the improvements that he made in season, it's really hard to make improvements in season, but he was hyper aware of some of the mistakes that he made, some of the shortcomings that he had, was asked to play every single position in the secondary as a corner. I think he is going to be a guy that people are talking about, maybe not as a first round pick next year. And I know he's he might be one of those guys that, hey, I just want to play another year at Michigan because of the reasons I mentioned before. I could make a lot of in NIL money, get another year before I go off to the NFL. But he's a guy that I expect to take a big time leap as a defensive back. And then on the offensive side of things, no shocker here. I'm going to go with one of my offensive linemen. That's Andrew Sprague. What I saw from him in that bowl game, and at times throughout the year, I know he's a little banged up and didn't play as much as I think they were wanting to use him his freshman year. He's got a nasty side of him, and that's what I really like about Andrew Sprague. There are things that he could do better in terms of pass protection, and he's such a young guy. He's going to get there, right? He's a redshirt freshman. It's his second year. Watching these players, especially as offensive and defensive linemen, grow from year one to year two. I don't know that there's another position group where there are more changes in a guy's body because of just growth, maturation, weight room, diet, the nutrition that they have here at Michigan, where you see big leaps from freshman to sophomore season. I know I experienced it. I was going from tight end to lineman, but this is a guy who came in that was really ready to play as a freshman and has put in all the time in the weight room, has really put together a good foundation in terms of nutrition, in terms of rest, in terms of just how he prepares for games. You saw it in the bowl game. I'm really excited to see him take the field this fall. I think he's a guy that obviously we're not going to be talking about in the draft next year because he's not eligible, but in a couple of years, yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that's sought after by a lot of NFL teams.
And I do think of the running back position, my guess is we will be talking about a Michigan running back being maybe a top 5 back in the Big Ten, but there are several candidates, which is exciting.
Well, yeah, that is exciting. And it's whether it's Jordan Marshall or it's Justice Haynes, both of those guys. And I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. It looks like they came out of the same mold. If you took away numbers and you took away, some different, stylistic things that they do, you could, as you see them on a daily basis, you could tell them apart. Those two dudes are built the same, and they are ready to have big time seasons. It's really going to depend on Sprague and company up front.
No doubt. Another ranking for you, schedule talk. Again, it's the NFL's week to say, hey, just so you know, mark your calendar for December 20th, Commanders Eagles or something. I think that actually is right, which is weird. We all know what number 1 is, but I do think outside of the game, which has been the biggest game in college football several times over the last handful of years in the regular season, what are games 2 through 5 right now as you see it as Michigan's most challenging games for 2025? Because I think there are arguments for several. It's a fascinating, I think, exercise because there are a lot of games where I think you feel pretty good as a Michigan fan, but each have some unique challenges or potential hurdles that make, I think, a handful of games, maybe 6, 7 candidates for this list.
Yeah, I guess I'll start out west and talk about the USC and Washington games. Obviously, Washington coming to Ann Arbor this year. We're going out to USC this year. Travel is always going to be an issue heading out there. And it kind of a wild card. Lincoln Riley, if there's a hot seat, I think he's probably one of those coaches that are on it. And, what's he doing at the quarterback position? What's he doing with protecting said quarterback? Offensively, they haven't been at all what they thought the USC fan base was getting when they got Lincoln Riley. Obviously, they had Caleb Williams for a year, but since then, it's been kind of mediocre at best. And there really hasn't been any breakout players coming out of USC. Washington, a little bit of a wild card there in regards to they've been very active in the transfer portal. We saw it last year, how it affected them, and the way that they were a very well coached team. So I think those are a couple. And I'll give you, obviously, Oklahoma going to Norman, second week of the season. To me, that is
speaking of hot seat.
Oh, sure. Brent Venables. That's why he took over the defense. He's calling everything defensively. If he's going down, he's going down swinging. And I think that's one that Oklahoma has circled early. That if they want to make a statement to the college football world, if Brent Venables, you beat Michigan in that situation. I don't care if it's a freshman quarterback. I don't care who's coaching, not coaching. that's going to be a premier game and red lettered game for Brent Venables and his job security. So that one to me, and it's just a place that, we haven't been. I've never been to Norman, Oklahoma. I know it's going to be a great college football environment. And then I think that I mentioned Wisconsin. They're coming to Ann Arbor. I don't know that there's anything that worries you that much about Wisconsin. Just in regards to that, it still seems like they're trying to figure things out. You already mentioned it in terms of Luke Fickell being 13-13. What type of offense are they going to be running? What's going to be effective for them? But going to Lincoln, Nebraska, it's where I like to go to make babies cry. And it's going to be fun to see this team in Lincoln. It's a great college football environment. Raiola, their quarterback's got a year underneath his belt of experience. What type of offense are they going to have? How explosive will they be? Are the black shirts back in Lincoln? I don't, there's a lot of question marks. We won't know that much about them because there's a lot of non-conference games leading up to that first Big Ten matchup. But I think that's one that raises an eyebrow of, can you go on the road in the Big Ten, to Lincoln and get a win?
Yeah. Lance sharing his thoughts of the three on the road there, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and USC. They're always challenging to go on the road. That Nebraska one to me is so fascinating because I do think Matt Rule's done even though he's had some, interesting comments here and there, I think he's done a nice job. I think he's a very good college football coach. And we have seen that I know the last time Michigan was in Lincoln, there were fans filing out in the second quarter, but 2 trips ago, building up to that 2021 Big Ten championship, that Nebraska team lost every game close, but maybe the most gut punch loss of that season for Nebraska was Michigan. Wolverines were fortunate to get out of there with a victory. The other one I'll throw out there, and it's just because of where it is on the schedule, it seems like this team every other year goes to Maryland before hosting Ohio State. I don't know if Maryland's going to be any good, but that's going to be a pain in the neck game. I think there are really interesting games all across. So you think outside of Ohio State, the toughest road games, the toughest home games, Washington, right?
Over Wisconsin. I would think so. Yeah, I mean, Purdue doesn't raise
the other 3.
Yeah, but I think one of the cool games is going to be Northwestern. Yeah, not that it's going to be any type of huge obstacle, but playing at Wrigley Field is going to be awesome.
Yep, 100%. There will be plenty of maize and blue there. There's no doubt. Jerry, by the way, thanks for the shout out to Mike Gittleson.
Oh yeah, Mike's awesome.
That's always, yeah. That is when we talk strength coaches.
He's a legend.
Mike Gittleson is not far off on the John Jansen answer. The last thing I want to get to, mentioning the schedule. Remember, last season Michigan had a 5-game homestand to start the year. Michigan will not play back-to-back home games this season. Impact that you see on that? This is more of an NFL style schedule, except for they don't have to go to Dublin or London or Brazil or
Madrid I like it. I think it's a good rhythm. Hey, you get a home game, you get on the road, you get a chance to get away from town, clear things up a little bit, and one of the things that this team is going to need to do is grow together as a team. You got a defense that's coming back, and yeah, there's a lot of leaders on this defense, but and I don't even want to get into who's going to be captains, who's not going to be captains, but offensively, a lot of moving parts. Some guys coming in as transfers, some guys coming in as freshmen. You're going to have to go to Oklahoma and really come together as a team. You get a chance to come home after that one, play Central Michigan, then you go on the road to play Nebraska. This is a season where this team is really going to have to unite. And I think having those alternating home and away games, you never get far away from being isolated as much as you can be in this world of sports where you're on the road and it's just us. And you start to come together and you come home and yeah, everything's nice and it's comfortable and it's friendly and it's fun. Then you go on the road. And again, it's this really, it has to be this tight unit to go into Lincoln to get a win. Then you're home against Wisconsin and then it's on the road to Southern Cal. And again, it's going to force this team to really come together. So then you get to the end of the season and you're playing a game like Maryland. All right. Old hat, no problem. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Maryland is no problem, but the travel, the coming together as a team is going to help them when they get to that point. And obviously, you need to be as tight of a unit as possible to play against the defending Big Ten champs and the Buckeyes.
No doubt. If Michigan gets through September unscathed, I think sky's the limit for this team. It's going to be really challenging going to Norman and Lincoln, two pretty desperate fan bases, obviously great atmospheres with a younger team for Michigan. If they're sitting there with the take care of business, home wins over New Mexico and Central Michigan, and then a couple of road games, it'll be fun to watch. Want to get out of here just with the updated and upcoming plans for the stream and the podcast. With the Memorial Day weekend coming up here, we'll take a little bit of a break on these live streams. We'll keep rolling on the audio version of In the Trenches presented by Meijer. Next week, 2 interviews for the price of 1. Evan Link and Eno Etta. So some big fellas up front, one offensively, one defensively. A great conversation coming up that Wednesday after Memorial Day with the newest member, or one of the newest members of the Michigan staff, and an old familiar face in Soup Campbell, assistant wide receivers coach, working with Ron Bellamy, obviously helping to mold a wide receiver room that has some time to go, right? Some improvements to make. And then we'll be back with a live stream 3 weeks from today will be our next one, June the 3rd. That's a Tuesday. Then we'll be back normally to the every other week through June and July. And then once we get into August, this will be pretty much every single Tuesday, barring travel or logistical things. But it'll be here before we know it. But nice to get a little bit of a respite and still get some great interviews as well, John.
Yeah, I'm excited about those conversations. Excited for everybody to get reintroduced to Soup. Glad he's back in Ann Arbor. I think it's going to be a game changer for that wide receiver room and really for this team. He brings a lot to an offense. But as we know him as the wide receiver coach, I think he's really going to bring a lot to that room and assist Coach Bellamy. Any
plans for Memorial Day?
Boy, that's a I didn't see that question coming this early. I mean, it's got a lot of
I guess we do have 2 weekends for it, but
yeah, my
you
anniversary
just got back from a trip.
I did just get back from a trip. Went down to Disney. Happiest place on earth. So you have to pay the bill.
Get any autographs?
I did not get any autographs.
I figured you would be starstruck. You'd be a little nervous.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like to see Cinderella and the princesses? But let's see, my wedding anniversary will be that Memorial Day weekend. So I'm sure my wife and I will try and get away, do something, but we'll still be on the morning show as of Memorial Day. So no real travel plans. I'm just hoping that the weather is nice so we can get out and enjoy some great weather here in Southeast Michigan.
Yes, it is not the prettiest day today, but it is without fail since I've been up in Ann Arbor. It seems like every year, even though now the last few years they've bumped graduation because they moved winter semester up a week. Every year without fail, rain, cloudy, cold, graduation weekend, and then the next weekend is
beautiful.
And you should, if you want your son or daughter to come to Michigan, there's obviously plenty of great ways to try to sell that. But if you want to do it on weather, plan to come the weekend after graduation. I can almost guarantee it's going to be 74 and mostly sunny.
Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. All right. That's it for us. We'll have Donovan McCully on the audio side. Be sure to check out Defend the Block, some great interviews. The Mike Boynton Jr. one out today. Namari Burnett, still very relevant from last week. And Lauren Durkowski from Michigan softball coming up Thursday on Conquering Heroes. So for Jon, I'm Brian. We'll talk to you back here on the YouTube stream coming up in 3 weeks.